With a bachelor in design from Yale University in Lisbon, in his early 20s, Rui Quinta described himself as a type freak. While still studying, he worked for several communication agencies, mostly as a designer. At the age of 24, his entrepreneurial spirit, nurtured in part by his fishmonger parents, led Rui to open a graphic design business with friends, which he led for around 3 years. Then, a pivotal question changed his trajectory. Why focus solely on aesthetics? This prompted him to delve into strategic branding beyond beautiful logos and eventually design thinking, an approach that applies design principles to diverse problems and domains. To study this discipline more intimately, Rui packed his bag and flew to Berlin, where he attended the D-School, Design Thinking Institute, for over a year. After that, he tells us, he insisted he wanted to work at IDEO, and he did briefly, an experience that didn't turn out as expected, paradoxically motivating him to open a few businesses in Portugal. Co-founded in 2011, Toinu playfully sold card animals and later pivoted to designing spaces. Peixaria Centenaria, co-founded in 2013, was a fish shop that artfully rewrote the narrative of his family business tradition for younger generations. And finally, With Company, co-founded in 2014, a transformative design company that does a bunch of cool, multidisciplinary projects in Portugal and beyond. With a mind that marries contemplation with action, stillness with movement, fun with responsibility, I invited Rui to listen more about the experiences and mental models that infused his character with the curiosity, the playfulness, and the humility he embodies.
I think I explored so many things. I had so much fun. I met so many incredible people. I took risks, and I think in the end, it's really interesting that in the middle of all of these things, I find a criteria that it's kind of using the heart as a mechanism of thinking.
I'm Carlota Guedes, and this is the Waking Youth Podcast. I like to start, when you meet someone, when you start empathizing with them, and particularly with all the content that there's online today that we share, there's words, concepts that stand out from looking at your stuff online. And, the ones that stood out for me, for your profile, they were quite a few. I'll just throw them and just see what they spark in you, okay? So, provocation, play, entrepreneurship, creativity. You're writing them down.
Yeah, I am.
Chaos and curiosity, okay? There are a lot of words. Okay. Just feel them. Maybe they mean something to you. And I like to start by grounding things in a little bit of personal history. So in the context of these words, if I ask you, where would you trace back the roots of your interest in these terms? And let's start with one, entrepreneurship. I did some research and I discovered that you were selling pine nuts very early on. So can you tell me a little bit about that and the roots of your interest in entrepreneurship and maybe creativity, which is very connected?
Yeah, I think, where is that?
It's in some podcast that you just randomly shared about the pine nuts.
Oh, wow. No, I think the roots come from, from the influence of my family. My grandparents, they had companies. My parents, they always, had their own business. And I think that's part of the story. I think you get inspiration from that because you see the example and then you maybe want to replicate, even if it's not something that it's too conscious, like you want to replicate that example. And I remember having a lot of conversations, even with my cousin, we should open a home appliances store or a restaurant, or having these conversations when I was really, really young. And yes, I had this stupid idea of, I had pine trees in my where I lived with my parents for a long time, and I would, catch these pine nuts, and I would go on the side of the road to try to sell them, which was a ridiculous idea. But
Why do you say it was ridiculous?
No, I don't know. It just feels like it was.
What was I
I don't
doing?
know. I think it was just fun to be honest. Like you're just playing with your cousin. Like he's the same age as I am. So at the time we were just trying to probably do something with our time. And we decided to go on the side of the road and making people stop and asking if they were interested in buying that. I think we didn't succeed it, but I think that was just the story behind it. So I would trace the root back to my parents probably, but also going a little bit forward, I think it's interesting because I had some experiences working for other people, working for other companies. And there's just these moments where you think you can do things differently, like you need more space to create and to make mistakes. And you always imagine that you can do things in a different way. So I always had that feeling that I think I was in denial for some time, like wanting to work for big companies and big design companies. And it simply didn't work. Like I really tried in a couple of them. Like it worked for me in smaller companies where I had more autonomy. Like I could, I would love to design things and I would love to be in contact with the client. And every time that happened, I was happy with that. Not only designing behind the screen, but actually interacting with clients.
Yeah.
But then I think I always felt a little bit constrained when working for bigger companies.
There's two questions there, and going back a little bit into the personal history, more the childhood and growing up. Because one thing is entrepreneurship and another thing is creativity. And I see that you're also very much, I don't know if this is correct, but I see that in your high school you have art. I don't know if if it was focused in art. Was it focused in art?
Yeah. It was.
And then you also talk about when it was the time to pick your bachelor, you were choosing between design and art. And so for me, it's curious because they're somewhat related, the part of the creativity and the entrepreneurship. For you, are they related?
I don't know if I would probably use another. It was never like if I would have to pick a word, I would probably pick the word play, or that it's related in a certain way with chaos and creativity together. Because for me, it was never conscious. Like what I feel today is that some of the important decisions I took in my life were not that conscious. Like I was not, looking and evaluating if it's going to be this way or that way. Or I think it was just a feeling that, maybe it's this way. But it's not that I was thinking about that too much. I feel today that I lived a lot with my feelings and I interacted with the world with feelings, with laughter, with hugs, with closeness and proximity to other people and to my family, to my friends. I just wanted to play, to be honest. I wanted to play
music
football
as well.
play music also and to discover new things. And yes, when I had to enter high school, I don't even remember the moment where probably I just said, okay, I think I'm going to arts because I had the intuition that maybe I will be freer, a sense of freedom. I don't know if that's a word, but
no, it is. But I'm curious as to why it's a word for you. Why is it an important word for you? Freedom.
Yeah, I think it relates also with the idea of exploration. Like when you're playing, you're not attached to. You're just playing. Like I have this. I wrote this presentation a long time ago. I think about 10 years ago for a conference in Saragossa that was talking about what we were as kids, how our past influences what we are going to do next. When I think about the memories I have when I was a kid, and maybe all of us, it's this sense of just being connected with others and not thinking about your next move and not being strategic about things and not being consistently, thinking and overthinking things. And suddenly your prefrontal cortex develops, and then it becomes something totally different. But I felt that for a long time, I was really, really just not trying in a conscious way, but just engaging with the world in a maybe freer way.
Okay. And do you think that throughout your adult life, because that's very present in the work that you do, and you always challenge people in that way. And the display is a repetitive theme in your talks and in your work. So do you think you kept display throughout your life, or you also lost a bit touch with it? I'm curious.
Yeah. I think I kept it. It's something that I see myself a lot of times saying my teams and the people who work with me, like you should, just feel free, explore, like don't feel constrained in this particular moment. And that's actually something that relates with creativity, because I started studying a lot about creativity and reading a lot about how to have ideas and the best way to have ideas. And then you start understanding the mechanisms behind, the behind good ideas, on how to get to good ideas. And it's not that it's always fun, but even in a particular process, when you are designing something, when you are thinking about something, there should be particular moments where you need to feel at ease to create and to explore and to make mistakes and to go other places, unexpected places. I still try to bring that aspect to work and to the projects I do. Actually, I see this. It's interesting because I also see, sometimes I give this example that my wife married me because she married 10 guys, 10 different people. I used to say this because it's like I have different characters. Sometimes I wake up with a different accent, and sometimes I'm a different person every day, which is difficult to to live with sometimes. But she says it's fun because it's always different. So she never gets tired. And I see kind of my companies, even talking about With Company or talking about Toino or other projects that I'm developing at this moment, I see them as kind of one part of that Rui, one part of that, if like a different side of myself. So I see With Company as my against things side. It's like you have to go against that. Like we have to think differently from a different perspective. Always try to look at things from in a different way. And Toino, for example, was my playful, the hyperbolic side. And that's what I bring to those businesses. It's not that those businesses are Rui. They're not. They're everybody's businesses. But I bring a different side, or I try to bring a different side to each one of these projects.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't know you personally. Well, I'm meeting you now, hopefully one day in person. But there's some contradictions here, which are not, because in the end we're human and we integrate all of those complexities. But I see that when you're on stage, you're very provocative and you're making people think and question things and also take action. And learning by doing, and doing seems very important to you. And then in other places, you describe yourself as a quiet guy that likes to spend time just relaxing and chilling and reflecting and reading. So there's this also of the doing and the reflecting, the extroversion and the introversion. So it's interesting to see that.
It seems like I have find an answer to that, which is the middle.
Yeah.
I think a lot about that. I'm always in extremes, or this hyperbolic side, or being a little bit pessimistic and being optimistic, or being in one side and another side. So it'll always feel that the answer is in the middle, which sometimes it doesn't help you, to be honest. Like it doesn't help you take decisions, but it feels like the role of me as a designer is also that. It's trying to find a balance between all of these extremes. Yeah, but I identify myself with that, like finding myself in different places. I think that's also a mode of thinking, to be honest. Like it's not only me being this or that. I think it's a mode of thinking. I've been working with a lot of strategists, working with a lot of people, and I think that that's the way I live, but that's also the way I think about things. I try to put things in perspective, and looking a little bit at those extremes, and then trying to find what happens in the middle. And then there's other people who think in matrices, like they do, like crossing, and then they find a way to get things together. There's people who think in layers, people who think in more projective and timefulness ways, for example. And I think I use this idea of a line and idea of a spectrum where I try to find a balance, between 0 and 10 in most of the decisions that I take, or most of the things that I think about. It's a mode of thinking when I'm trying to solve something.
Yeah, I read somewhere also that we were talking about this idea of the line and the spectrum in the context of optimism and pessimism. And it was so beautifully put that it's not a position, it's a point of view, and you can change, and changing that will actually bring insights that you wouldn't have if you were not moving in that spectrum. That's very beautiful.
Yeah, and it's the best argument for you not to sit in one particular place. Honestly, it's okay to change. I think it's okay. You're a different person every day, every year. So I think in a way it's good that you don't stick to a permanent position when you have to think about something. So having a spectrum, it means also that you can move to the left or to the right or up and down. And you can consider other positions, and you consider other opinions, and you consider the other, and you consider your own position when thinking about something. And I think that reflection was interesting because I was like, it even depends on the day. I was telling about that. I think in that particular day, I woke up, you just read the newspaper, and there's not one one positive thing on the newspaper. I was feeling a little bit depressed, maybe, I don't know. And I just positioned myself in the pessimism. But I look at, it's not that it happens every day, but it happens a lot, like being a little bit more pessimistic about things. But it was interesting for me to think about that as a point of view. Like I stay here because it's like I have a blank page in front of me, like if there's a book, what's the name of the book? I think it's Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. And it has this, pessimistic perspective that we are on our way to extinction, but he uses that as an inspiration point for you to have a different life, or to think about
a memento mori. Realize your own death, and from there.
Yeah. And from there, it feels like you can be a little bit at ease, and not contributing to make things worse, but actually, to enjoy your time and to give what you have best to give. And I think that's an interesting perspective, to be honest. And it's not that I have it every day. But again, when I'm feeling a little bit more pessimistic, I see that as a good thing, because it's like having a blank page. I think we did an exercise. We did an exercise with company when the pandemics hit, and we were feeling that, people were a little bit broken. Like you are not attached to anything because your reality suddenly transformed. Like everybody, like you're not working as you usually work. You're not eating as you typically eat. Like you're locked in your home. So you are like, everything is new from the beginning. So it feels like a really interesting place to think about the future, right? So because what limits you to think about the future, it's actually your present reality and your connections and the things that you read and the things that you know and the system and the way it interacts with you and the way you interact with it. And if the system in a way is broken, and that happened with the pandemics, I think it's also a good opportunity. Like everything was so bad at that moment, was so strange at that moment, that it's a good opportunity for you to think about what the future can be, right?
I want to explore a little bit more of your path. I see here that at 24, you start your first business that evolves from a sort of collective of freelancers. Am I correct?
Yeah, I was studying at that time, and I was working at a company, as a small design company, and I left my place around 6 in the afternoon, and I felt, I think I can do more. I think I can. So I decided to rent this space in Santos, and I asked some other friends to join me at that moment. The name, I think I can share the name with you because it's so ridiculous and fun, which is Three Lancers, and not freelancers.
Three Lancers.
We were three people. So but we had this place where we got together and we started finding some projects, some freelance projects. We would work together in designing spaces, designing brands, designing magazines, and we asked other people, and we invited other people to join us for some projects, and that thing actually became a company some like 1 or 2 years after us setting up camp at in Santos here in Lisbon. Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
Google.
I'm curious at that point, because you worked a little bit in communication agencies before. Did you had it present already that you wanted to start your own business, or it was just something that sort of happened when it happened because you were just going with the flow of life?
No, I had this feeling that I would end up designing a design company and owning a design company. I think I knew that. I just wanted to have experience before that and to learn from others before that happened. So actually it happened at the same time. Like I was working and designing my own company, but I had this feeling that I was, a starter. I remember being provocative in university and designing posters with a friend of mine to provoke people into thinking about things. And I remember going, it was really funny in my university because there was like the design people and the marketing people, and there was the conference of the university that was marketed by the marketeers and designed by the marketeers. And I was like, why are the marketeers doing the design of this conference? And I remember going, up there and telling them like, I want to do this because I'm a designer. So, and designers should be, thinking about design. So I always had this, kind of proactive way of looking at things and trying to provoke people in thinking about things. And there was a moment where I was afraid of showing my work. Like I was embarrassed. I'm not going to show this to anyone. In high school, my art stuff, like I never shared. Like I was really, really like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. And suddenly I started sharing bits of things, and I started exploring, things a little bit more related with design. And I felt I can learn so much. It's like I have to be ready to take it. I have to be ready to listen to what people have to say. It's not that it's not good enough. Like maybe it's not good enough, and that's okay. But I need to ask people, why is this not good enough, or what they think about it. So I think there was this moment. I don't remember where it happened, but it was really important that moment happened in when I decided to start showing my work, to promote it, to talk with people, to ask for opinions. I think at the beginning in a personal basis, with conversations, and after that, building my first and personal website after finishing. When I was still in my university, I was one of the few designers who actually had a website, like a personal website. And that was, and I think that shows a little bit that willingness to share the work, even if the work is not perfect. Like you want to share, you want to talk about the process, and you want to listen to what people say about it.
It's interesting to go through your social media profiles, LinkedIn as well, and you share not only the work that you're doing, also some reflections. There's one particular post on LinkedIn that you talk about, that I think you make this confession and provocation to people about this idea of the promotion of superheroes in our society. And you also seem a bit critical of the social media landscape and the intentions behind the social media landscape, the people that are running these things. And you touched on the word personal branding. You talk about creating your website. So, as someone who is very curious about a lot of things, but I know that you're into psychology and anthropology and sociology, and you have talked multiple times about some concerns that you have. How do you sit with this? On one hand, sharing these things because you feel inspired, I suppose, to share them, but also not falling into the over promoting yourself and portraying a certain idea of who you are and how successful you are, and that participating in the game of comparison and so on. Have you thought about this? What's your view on this? I don't know if maybe it's not a theme for you at all.
I think one of the first things that I can say is that I always use social media as a space to learn. It's like being in a social context where you're there because you're learning about what's happening in there. So I always I had that, with Facebook. I had that with previous platforms that were here before Facebook. So I'm still present in those platforms because I want to learn why people are using it, and how can I use it. And I am a different persona also in those spaces. I don't know if you realize that, but like if I look at Instagram and LinkedIn, they're totally different. But even when you had Facebook and Instagram, it was two different things. I was exploring different parts of myself, and so I see that also as a platform to explore different personas. I don't think that's the interesting point of view of the question you posed. I really don't like the idea of a superhero. I really don't identify myself with that. I'm really critical about unicorns. I'm really critical about monopolies. I'm really critical about, always taking the best examples as the examples that you should follow, because I think it really, really creates a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety in everybody. And I don't think that's helpful, to be honest. Like, I really don't think that's helpful. Because it just puts pressure on you to be something when knowing that only 0.0011% of people will get there. And I don't think it works, to be honest. But relating this with the type of material that I share, what I try to do is to be honest about things, I would say. I think on a particular, like on Instagram, for example, I think I can be honest saying that that's the life I wanted to have every day. I think your question was so interesting, and it seems like I'm going
you're
around.
answering. You're answering. It was about this idea of social media, how you use them in more conscious ways, because you feel inspired to share and to get feedback and to make people think, but also not in such a way that you're trying to portray yourself as a superhero.
Yeah.
And participating in the over-promotional culture, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the type of things. Even I'm sorry that it seems a little bit, I don't know, not interesting to talk about this, but I'm thinking like, what do I share on Instagram? And I share. It's like a diary for me, to be honest. Like it's like I have a place where I put photos of my travel and the beauty I see. I'm wearing a camera since I was 14. Every day I take pictures of everything since I was 14. So for me, it's kind of a continuation of that. It's a place where I share things that I find interesting and beautiful. But it's also a place where I sometimes share some wording, like some texts that I write for a long time now that are hidden in a blog that nobody knows about because it's locked, and I'm afraid of sharing that because it's maybe too ridiculous and too experimental, and maybe that breaks a little bit this I don't know, it's contradictory. But sometimes I use it also as, a way of, I'm going to share this text and see what happens, to see if it resonates, because it's abstract, but at the same time it's experimental. So let's see what people say about this, if they think I'm going crazy or what. But I think it's a place where I also experiment, pieces of content and the way people interact with those pieces of content. And I think it's interesting in a way to see how it works.
I won't ask you, I think there's plenty of podcasts and talks as well that you talk about your work in your companies, in Peixaria Centenária, that closed recently, more or less. Toino, that is also super interesting, and how you pivoted entirely and with company. What I would like to ask you, because you shared publicly as well that part of the reason why you closed Peixaria was because you reflected and you were reflecting together of the impact of the business in the environment. And this is a recurrent theme of yours, the environmental awareness and the social awareness and consciousness. Conscious is a word that you use a lot too. And I know also, or I assume that there's a particular reality of a design firm that collaborates with clients, that you have to be financially sustainable, right? So I'm just curious, how do you sit with this theme of environmental and social awareness in your other companies? How do you sit with this? I won't speak for you.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, the connection you make with Peixaria. I think that's one reason, but there's different reasons. That there's a pyramid full of arguments that led me to close Peixaria. But I think that's one. That was part of a lot of conversations we had here at home with my wife. She was a partner at the fish shop, and we had a lot of conversations about that throughout the years, about participating in that. And but that was just one of the reasons. And now it's easy as an argument, to connect that with the idea of degrowth. Like you can be. I'm still trying to discover if this is a story that I'm telling because it's nice, or if this is a story that is actually true, and maybe there's a connection between these things. So I'm really trying still to fine tune the honesty in this particular part. But studying about degrowth and talking about being an entrepreneur or being someone who owns companies, who builds things, but it's okay to close them if you're not doing as good as you think. If you're getting tired, if you're getting exhausted, it's okay to close things. I think it's okay to go against what people expect from you. As business people, they expect you to sell things. They expect you to make a lot of money. They expect you to do whatever, it's in the books. And for me, it's also interesting to look back now after almost 2 years now of closing the fish shop, that it's kind of growing on me also, that idea that, I also wanted to close it because maybe there was too much, maybe I was not doing the right thing. And that's one particular argument that I think it's interesting that you bring to the conversation. And taking that as kind of an important point of discussion with the teams at With Company and the teams at Toino, because it's always a point of discussion. It seems like we also stand, like if I look at With Company, I was talking about this the other day, like if I look at our communication work and the things that we are doing, it's really interesting because it's really difficult, because you want to be inspiring, but you are a consultancy. Like you want to talk about community, but you are a private company. And so like the way we communicate tries to be a lot of things at the same time. And I think we do it with a certain level of, I think we are good in doing it. To be honest, I think we are good in finding the balance between being inspiring and talking about our work and the work we do with our clients. And we have lots of conversations with the teams, we're working with big corporations. And I go back, I think it helps a lot, this sentence that we use sometimes, which is, what we care for is everyone's business. I don't know if you heard this somewhere, but it seems a little bit pedantic. I think it can seem a little bit pedantic because, why are these people just telling me what's important? Like what we care for is everyone's business. But look at the conversation that we are having. We're talking about impact. We're talking about the planet. We're talking about extinction. We're talking about maybe aging gracefully. We didn't mention that, but I wouldn't mind. You wouldn't mind probably. So, and I think all of these things are here. And it seemed like some of these topics were confined to us, to some people in the last years. And I think today they're everywhere. I think it's impossible not to be concerned about all of these things, about, it's a systemic conversation. It's a never ending conversation. So what we do, to be honest, is that we try, there's a lot of incredible people working with us. And this is what I feel every day. Like we have many incredible people that have personal concern about these topics. And when we give these people the space and the ability to manifest themselves in these projects for these big clients, when we tell them, this is what you believe in, just take it. No, you have to consider, it's a company, they have their own rules. Consider the spectrum. Sometimes I mentioned that, consider the spectrum from 0 to 10, never commit to 0. Never. Like if we were doing a project on diversity and inclusion, the client, they will have to take 100 decisions about that topic when designing the new office, for example. Those 100 decisions, none of them should stick to 0. They should change something, even if it's a small thing, they should be able to change it. So this is the type of incentive that we have in these conversations is, it's like you're in the system, but you're trying to change the system by being there. These clients are also coming to us because they recognize that, because they recognize that we're coming from somewhere else. Like, we are not coming from the type of company and the type of consultancy that hires people from the same universities with the same background, thinking about the same things. We have a good mixture of people that think about business, that think about design, that think about ecology, that think about transformation, and they're coming from different places. And I think that's really beautiful to watch. It's interesting to see us influencing these big companies into becoming better companies.
Yeah.
Because they will have no alternative. Like, if you think about it, they don't have an alternative to that. They really have to change.
Mm-hmm. If you could speak across time now, what words would you share with your 20-year-old self, knowing what you know now? Would you have any words of wisdom, advice, suggestions, reflections? What would it be for you?
I don't know, but I think I already thought about saying that you would not change anything in your life. There's a moment in time when you say, I would not, you listen to this a lot. I would not change anything. I don't know if I would, I think I would probably change a bunch of things, I think I would, I don't know what, to be honest, but I would probably change some things. But I don't know what I would tell I think I would. Cut.
It also communicates something. The silence also communicates.
Yeah. You see, but this is the jazz, what I would tell myself if I was 20. I think I explored so many things. I had so much fun. I met so many incredible people. I took risks, and I think in the end, it's really interesting that in the middle of all of these things, I find a criteria that it's kind of using the heart as a mechanism of thinking. Because this is something that I identify myself with as an entrepreneur, which is I have to relate with the things that I do. Like, I cannot do a business for the sole reason of making money, or I don't know how to do that. I'm not an entrepreneur who knows how to do that, to be honest. So I would still use, this sounds a little bit, but I would still use my heart to as a way of taking decisions, or I don't know.
Thank you, Rui.
Thank you. Sorry for the chaotic, it was so
Not
chaotic.
sorry. No, you were jazzing. You were jazzing. Thank you. Thank you for your openness. Rui Quinta is the co-founder of Toinu and With Company. To learn more about his work, you can visit ruiquinta.com. Waking Youth is an independent podcast and newsletter that you can find more about and contribute to at wakingyouth.substack.com. Our theme music is composed and produced by Carlos Sierra, who also edits our episodes, and I'm Carlota Guedes. If you like this episode, please consider sharing it with someone you think would appreciate it. And before you go, thank you for being with us today, and talk to you next month. Bye!